Wait, this is from Vox.
If there's
That seems uncommon for Vox to do a video like this. Oh no, Vox in video games? Jesus.
one thing I appreciate when playing video games, it's great mechanics. The web swinging in Spider-Man Miles Morales feels really natural. And in Fortnite, you can destroy essentially everything, and then turn it into a wall with a few intuitive gestures. But The Last of Us Part 2 impressed me for something much more subtle. The doors. This mundane, everyday task is what took developers the longest to get right. As the game's co-director put it on Twitter, "F doors." The Last of Us Part 2 is a super realistic game, and the team knew that if a player is going to open a door, it can't just magically fly open. But even for less realistic games, like Fortnite, doors are still painstakingly hard to make.
I mean, why take Fortnite as an example?
What
Fortnite is
makes
a disaster of a
video
game.
game doors so difficult?
Every time I'd walk through a doorway, I just keep like bonking myself into the corners and into the walls next to the doors. It's like, all right, well, this sucks. I'm Brian Singh, I'm a game developer, and I guess I really like doors.
Brian's worked on games like Journey, Uncharted 4, and The Last of Us Parts 1 and 2. On Part 2, his job was to get doors working from a technical perspective.
I think complexity of all different door states and
Is it because of the
ways
animation?
interacting with doors, it seems simple in the real world because you're used to it.
But in a video game, that's not the case.
You have to consider every other situation, every other system, every other object and character that can interact with doors or be around
Collision
doors
animation, yeah.
Start counting the number of doors you actually see in games, and you'll see a lot of games just don't put doors in the doorways.
This ship in World of Warcraft has just an open doorway. So does this room in Assassin's Creed. For games that do have doors, they fall into a few unofficial difficulty categories. Games like Halo use Tier 1 doors. They open or close based on your proximity to them. These doors are the least finicky to implement.
That's fine. That's okay.
They don't interact with anything because they slide in on themselves, and they have no in-between.
I'm okay with that.
They're only open or closed. Tier 2 doors have to look like real-world doors, even if they don't operate in exactly the same way.
It's very uncommon in the real world to have a door that opens in both directions. In video games, it's extremely common.
The character in the game usually doesn't physically touch the door in this
Yeah,
tier,
it's a fucking
but
long-range
sometimes,
spell almost.
like in Fortnite, developers might
so
throw in
dumb.
an arm gesture to suggest character interaction.
One of the things that comes up a lot in
It's
games
like a fucking
is
spell,
it's kind
dude.
of assumed that the size of doors are going to be
That's most
exaggerated.
games.
Because you have this problem, what your character is doing is not at all what the actual human player is doing behind the controller.
Precision movements can be challenging, which would make navigating through a small door frustrating.
Usually the default solution is just make the doors really big, and that way it's way easier to go through the doors. You don't have to think about it.
But that's not the only reason doors are huge. They also allow
It's for
clear
noobs.
visuals.
Once your player goes through the door, like what is the camera doing? Like normally the camera is like just
Oh,
slightly
it's
above
gonna
door
jam
height,
in.
so you have to like duck it
It's-
down.
oh,
make sure
yeah,
the
it's gonna-
cameraman also like squeezes through the door and doesn't look like crazy.
Doors also have to look like they're physically interacting with everything else in the scene.
Animation in doors already a f***ing complicated problem.
Yeah, as I said,
In real
animation would be the
life,
hardest.
Everything is solid, but in the world of 3D modeling, nothing is solid. Objects can pass right through each other. Making sure that doesn't happen in every possible scenario with any possible object is a tedious task.
Well, Fortnite just dodged the
Tier
whole
3
thing.
doors are maximum effort. The character has to actually physically interact with the door for it to open.
Fortnite says
Having
fuck
the
it,
character
dude.
actually
Long range
connect
opening.
with the door handle without breaking player immersion is
This is
a
so weird.
complicated dance between player control and preset animations.
It's pretty much a golden rule. Anytime you take control away from the player, it feels weird. It feels bad. So with doors, worst case scenario, you hit the button, you're effectively playing a cutscene or something.
Giving players enough control to
Yep.
break away from the
That's
door in the middle
clanky.
of opening it means that character animation must be chopped up into tiny pieces. But even if you get all that right, the work doesn't end there.
Anytime you add any one thing to the gameplay, you have to make sure it works with every other aspect of the game.
For instance, characters can have different emotional states that require unique animations.
Well, just bored.
If you're calmly investigating a room,
what was that word I just said? It's just weird because
you'll open the door.
if there's an animation, what happens if there's enemies running after you?
Demeanor.
What happens if there's enemies running after you and you're opening a door? Are you invincible? No, you should be invincible, but can you abuse that? It's just
Crap,
weird.
There's enemies here. I'm gonna go. They can.
What if you're running
run
and
through
the
the
character
door
goes
with great haste.
Throw in a few NPCs, and
while you're getting
the
fucking
meticulous
stabbed in the back
work
by a bunch of
just gets
zombies.
even more complicated.
AI is a whole another complexity where, okay, now the companion characters as well as the enemy characters also have to understand how to strategize around that. Like, okay, do they test the door to learn that it's locked? Do they know that it's locked already and know how to like try to find a way around the door?
And this problem isn't just localized to doors. Other objects, like ladders, are also challenging to make for similar reasons. Doors are hard because all of game development is hard. But when the goal of a game is realism and the fidelity that you can achieve with new consoles is incredible, that challenge becomes something of a necessity.
Especially on The Last of Us, the philosophy was avoid as many disconnects from reality as possible so you can just be more immersed. Like every time you experience a disconnect, that's just like one more reminder that, oh yeah, I'm playing a video game instead of being invested into what's going on.
In researching this story,
Okay.
I came across...
Okay. I kind of wish that they went into more games and saw more. Guys, I wish we saw more. I know it sounds kind of dumb and nerdy, but I want to see more of more video games. Like the bad ones, the trash ones, the ones that are buggy.
Give me the